Okay. Let me share my screen now and then we'll start. Sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue with the screen share. Sorry, just slight technical difficulties on my end. Since I'm having an issue with my screen share, I'm not certain why. Okay, just to skip over that issue, I'm just going to give everyone a brief overview of who we are at Lean, and then I'll hand over to Catherine, who will begin the session. Great. So, first of all, just a bit of logistics to it, rather, yeah, but no logistics to it. First things first, at the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A. Feel free to use the chat section so things to ask your questions. You can also ask the questions and we'll look through everything so that we can get the right question. So you can get to your questions and ask the facilitators or whatnot. Secondly, please be respectful and supportive. Feel free to engage, but let's also watch the kind of words that we use in engaging with our co-attendees and also the speakers. Also, definitely turn your cameras on. Let's get to see your beautiful faces, beautiful hairdos. It's always interesting to have a great view of who we're even speaking to. For some reason, it creates a stronger bond, and why not? I mean. Then also, we'll share an attendance sheet periodically on the group chat. So definitely, please sign into that attendance sheet and let's have your information. That attendance sheet gives you certain perks down the line. So it would be great for you to give your information on that attendance sheet. Yeah, okay, thank you, Okpe, for sharing your screen. Okpe, I miss all everybody, trustworthy friend. Okay. Next slide. Oh yes, and there for the duration, kindly remain on mute. If at a point we do intend later on to have people speak and ask questions, I'm sure that we'll speak to that section and we'll have you raise your hand. Great. All right. Thank you. Kindly scroll over to the next page, please. All right. Okay, so at the MBA for Africa webinars, we've had over 10 schools represented. It runs between August to November, and then it happens usually 8 p.m. West African time. If you can check our YouTube channel, City of Lean, and then you'll see that we have recorded over, I believe, over 10, 15 videos within the last space. Okay, not 15, but over 10 videos definitely within the last few months. And therefore, it's a great opportunity for everyone to, for those who are interested in the MBA application, you can go online, see what's going on, and then we can work around ways to assist everybody in their applications. Yeah, so joining our YouTube, checking up our YouTube channel and then joining our Discord community will give you access to various free resources and opportunities that are going on within the platform. Thank you. Next slide, please. Sorry. Okay, on our MBA for Africa webinar, yeah, like I said, it's been on for 2 years. Over 13 MBA programs have been hosted all the way. The different schools that we've had involvement with are all listed on the screen. So we have quite a variety of individuals who are participating in this program and quite a variety of students from the Lane members that have gotten admission into a lot of these universities currently displayed on the screen. So there is a rich body of alumni scattered around, and it would be great if you have any interest in applying to any of these schools. There's always a helping hand related to one of these schools that can give proper guidance on how to properly apply for your MBA programs within the institutions. On the call today from NYU Stern, we have Catherine DeMazo. I hope I did pronounce that well. She's the Senior Associate Director of MBA Admissions at NYU Stern School of Business. Hi, Catherine. Sorry, please confirm if I pronounced your surname well. I'm rather excited.
You got it exactly right, DeMarzo.
I'm happy. I'm good. All right, so just a brief background to Catherine. Catherine has been a member of the NYU Stern MBA admissions team since 2016. She enjoys speaking with prospective students about the NYU Stern's MBA programs and recruiting the next class of Sternies, as they're called. Before joining NYU Stern, Catherine was a client relations manager at Ivy Wise in New York. She earned her bachelor's in international studies from Boston College and her master's in higher education and student affairs from NYU Stern. Also on the call, we have Oluwaseun Ososomi. Yes, Ososomi. I do hope I pronounced Ososomi. That's the first time. That was the first time ever in my life I'm seeing that. So I'm really
no worries at all.
Probably get it. Yeah. So Seun is Seun was a candidate for MBA 2020 at NYU Stern School of Business. Currently, from his handle alone, I can see that he works at Credit Suisse. I'm sure I pronounced that well. So yeah, it's nice to meet you, Seun. Also on call with us, we have Olayinka Lawal. Olayinka is an MBA candidate for year 2023 at NYU Stern School of Business. Olayinka, if you'd like to give us a brief background or intro into your person.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Really good to be here. I think, unlike Seun, I'm a part-time MBA student at NYU. My background is in consulting, and I am currently in tech. So I work at Google now in a strategy and operations capacity. Is there more that you would like me to say for now?
No, that's phenomenal enough. I'm sure people will get to ask you much more questions as things go on. Okay. Also, please find here the attendance form. This link will be posted often in the group chat, so kindly do your best to fill the form, and then yes, let's get down to the situation at hand. Catherine, I hand over to you. Looking forward to an exciting session.
Great. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad I'm able to be here today to teach you all just a little bit more about Stern. But I do have a deck that I'll kind of go through that goes through the programs at Stern, definitely focusing on the two-year full-time MBA program, as well as getting into the admissions piece a little bit and really focusing in more on advice or tips that I might have to offer about the process. But once we get into the Q&A, I'm happy to really answer any questions that you might have. So give me 1 second and I will pull up my deck if I'm okay to share. Let's see. All right. Can everyone see my screen that says crafting a competitive MBA application in NYU Stern? Awesome. All right. Great. So again, welcome. Glad that I'm able to be here today. So, there are a lot of different things that make our program really just stand out in the midst of other, I know great MBA programs, especially in the US, but some things I definitely want to highlight right off the bat are that we're deeply connected to many industries, with New York and our location in New York being kind of an unmatched asset that, many other schools can't really offer. So we want the student experience to be all about transforming and building skills and developing things that you might not have had before. And there, are a couple themes that you might pick up on as I talk. One of them being our concept of how we view change and how we really want to prepare our students to be able to meet change head on, especially when they do graduate. and the other being IQ plus EQ, which is, we not only have smart students at Stern, accomplished students, but students who really have high EQ or a lot of emotional intelligence. And I'll get into both a little more in depth. So change. So this Change Studio is something, it was a brand call to action that we really formalized about 3 years ago. So believe it or not, this is actually before the pandemic. A lot of this actually, I look back on it and think it's pretty funny to see how the world has changed so much in 3 years. But this is really a co-curricular program to help MBA students become, adept at understanding and being able to drive and impact change. So there are a lot of these programs that actually exist, as separate classes before we kind of codified it as the Change Studio. But, we really want them to develop confidence and build skills in a world of constant change, because clearly that is what it is at this point. So, this really begins even in launch, which is our new student orientation. And there are activities such as a leadership accelerator, inclusive leadership training, things like that. And then once students, become full-time students at Stern or part-time students, such as Yinka, they're able to select different programming from these 3 verticals. So the DARET vertical really focuses mostly on leadership, building leadership skills there. There are workshops you can take. There are, leadership simulations. You could spend a half a day or a whole day being thrust into an unknown situation and, be given instructions and kind of go through the paces. And at the end, you can get some pretty actually robust feedback on what your leadership is like and some tips for going forward. There's also the Dream It vertical, and this is more focused on experiential learning. So we don't want our students just to sit in a classroom for 2 years and listen to a professor. We want them to be solving real world problems in real time. So many of these experiential learning classes will pair with organizations in New York City, and they'll be taught, there might be there's a problem that needs to be solved, and they'll be tasked with helping to solve that problem. And then the last one, the Drive It, that is really more about entrepreneurship. So, a lot of our students, certainly more of a long-term goal, but some even, have short-term goals of entrepreneurship. And we want to make sure that they are really equipped to handle that as well. So that there is the Endless Frontiers Lab at Stern, and this is a full year course where students are able to pair with startups and almost act as a consultant for that startup. There's the Berkeley Lab for Innovation. There is an entrepreneurship or an entrepreneurs challenge. So there are many, many resources that we really want to offer to our students. So this coursework, it's not required. However, I think you'll find that many students will take at least 1 or 2 of these courses, workshops, what have you, while they are at Stern. So I know I talked a little bit about IQ plus EQ as well. So to describe that a little bit more fully, when I think of emotional intelligence, I'm really thinking of things qualities such as self-awareness, empathy, being able to work on diverse teams together, leaning into conflict, and that kind of pairs with our view on change. But those are the types of things that we certainly look for in the application process, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but certainly this is something we want to build in our students. So as much as things like technology are transforming the business world day by day, we know that having strong EQ is something that employers are really looking for out of MBA graduates. So those that succeed, they're not only going to be working with data and analytics and things like that, but they can take that data, translate it into human insights and really take action from that. So there are certainly different ways we help to foster EQ while at Stern. Starting again, launch our new student orientation, but there are programs such as Leadership Fellows, where students will take a full year and really be able to hone in on what their leadership style is. There's also a program called Stern Speaks that is pretty special, where students are able to get up in front of their classmates and tell a story about themselves. I think more often than not, the story tends to be more personal and less professional. And they get to share that side of themselves and be vulnerable with their classmates. And so programs like these, I think you'll really see help to foster the development of EQ while students are at Stern. All right, so I'm assuming that most people on the call are going to be most interested in the 2-year full-time MBA program, which is our flagship one. I will let you all know we also have 2 focused 1-year MBA programs as well. One, the Andre Kutek MBA. So this is really meant for students who are passionate about technology and know without a doubt that's the industry they want to go into post an MBA. And then the second one is in a similar vein, students, the Fashion and Luxury MBA, students interested in fashion, luxury, and retail. They're able to pursue this 1-year MBA program and then go into that industry post MBA. There is, I'll talk about that a little bit, but to go back to the 2-year full-time MBA program. So, once students do begin, we have a core curriculum. I think, however, this 2-year program, it's really known for both its breadth and depth. What I mean by that is you're going to be exposed to many different subjects, and that definitely starts in the core curriculum. However, once you are able to get past the core curriculum, it's really up to you what you want to make of the rest of your curriculum. So you can take any electives that you want. You can even take classes outside of Stern at other NYU schools. So that flexibility is definitely something that I want to highlight. It really gives you the full range of what you want without having to sacrifice, depth, for example. So there is the core curriculum, but then, it is really up to you to make your education what you want it to be. I also, one of the kind of hallmarks of the 2-year program is the summer internship between your first and second years. I think this is especially important for anyone who's looking to make a pivot of some sort in their career. It gives them an opportunity to try out a company, try out an industry only over, 2 to 3 month period. If they're lucky, they might even get a return offer, but I think that is, again, just a great way. And I think something you can really do throughout the MBA program is a way to try different things you might not have been able to do before. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but it's a place where maybe you'll fail at certain things, but that's okay because you are in an MBA program. We want you to do that exploration. Kind of to go along with the I guess, depth of the subject areas we have here at Stern, students are able to specialize in certain subject areas. So you can become almost like a mini subject area expert in something like, let's see, sustainability or luxury retail. It could be global finance. Healthcare is a newer one. So if you decide that you want to go into the healthcare industry, then perhaps specializing in healthcare might make sense. You could also choose specializations that, they just sound interesting to you. Maybe you've always been fascinated by fintech. So there is a lot that goes into specializations and those electives. As I mentioned, you can take up to 25% of your classes outside of Stern at other NYU schools. Maybe there's something at the Wagner School of Public Service or the law school that sounds interesting to you. We even have many international experiences through, a more classic semester abroad. We also have doing business in or DBI courses, which are shorter term study abroad, where you might travel to a location for a week or 2 weeks and learn about a subject area that is closely correlated to that location. To give examples, Stern has taken students to Costa Rica and studied sustainability in the past. We've also taken students to Tel Aviv and Israel and studied tech and entrepreneurship. These are the types of things that I really just want to highlight as being very important as hallmarks for the 2-year program. So I'll lightly touch on the 1-year programs. So these, I would say, is a much more lockstep and perhaps less flexible curriculum because, again, these students expected they're going into certain industries post an MBA. They run from May of 1 year to May of the next year, meaning there is not time for a summer internship. So because of that, we have built some experiential learning kind of into the programs. But, I think these, again, I sometimes have been asked if you're interested in technology, is the 2-year program more appropriate or the 1 year? And that really depends on your goals. If you're someone who is interested in tech, but you kind of want to try it out a little, maybe the 2-year program is a better fit for you. But these programs have sent people to many different tech and fashion luxury companies, such as, Microsoft, Amazon, PwC, LVMH. So there are so many big names out there as well. All right, so to talk a little bit about faculty. There we go, faculty. So regardless of the program you attend, you will all be part of the Stern community, meaning that you're going to be taught by Stern's faculty members. So we have about, over 300 faculty members. They're all experts in very far-reaching fields, many of which I probably know very little to nothing about. But, a lot of these faculty members have led, founded, influenced some of the world's top businesses, many that are actually even based in New York. So I would say the way faculty members teach, it's really up to them to design their classes. So we're not a school that subscribes to just one learning style. You're not only going to do case studies while at Stern, for example. It could be lectures. They might bring in guest speakers. Perhaps they will do a lot of group projects. So it's really up to the subject area of the class, but also how the professor wants to teach that class, which I think is really great. So you're not going to do the same thing in every class every single day. So these are some of our faculty members. A few that I'll mention. So Nate Pettit in the center at the bottom. Nate is the head of our Leadership Accelerator department at Stern, and he focuses a lot of his research on leadership and how to be a good leader, especially in organizations. Someone else I'll mention is Dolly Chugg. She's in the top left corner, but Dolly focuses a lot of her research on implicit bias and making sure that as you become a leader, that you're not bringing in different biases you might have learned growing up into that style. So they're great. I will call on Yinka and Shayon if you want to share maybe 1 or 2 faculty members you've taken classes with that kind of really stuck with you so far.
Yeah, I can go. I
Great.
took a class last spring with Michael Posner. So
Yes.
Michael, yes. So it was actually at the law school. And it was a human rights business class, and it was one of my favorite so far. It was, I think, one of my introductory class to my specialty in sustainable business and innovation. And it was really good to see, it was, because it was a law class, it wasn't just teaching, it was a lot of questioning. And it was really good to see the merge between what it means to hold businesses accountable to human rights when primarily you think of governments being the ones to do that. So it was a really great class. I'd recommend him. He's awesome.
Thank you.
I have my video off because I'm on 3% and I'm trying to save as much battery as possible.
No problem.
I took a class.
Oh, Shayon, we can't hear you.
Oh wait,
Oh,
can you hear
there
me
you
now?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So I said I took a class with Amy Webb, bottom right, on strategic foresight and predicting the future of technology, which is fascinating because I cover tech now, and just like knowing about how to think about the future of technology, that was helpful. I also did leadership fellows and like engaged with Nate a lot. So it's definitely a good person to keep in mind. And then like it did like the typical demoderate for corporate finance. I also did marketing with like Russell Weiner. I don't know, it's just like there are lots of quality professors that are not even on this page, but exist across the entire NYU network. I took a class called Writing a Life with a professor who was a former ballet dancer and wrote a book on balancing, who was like a famous ballet choreographer. And I did that not within Stern, but with like the larger NYU network. So people are in the ecosystem that have quality backgrounds and can definitely help whatever interest you have.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that really highlights definitely at least the breadth of subject areas that our faculty members teach. You did touch upon Professor Demoterin, who, for anyone who doesn't know, he's very popular at Stern. He's known as kind of the father of valuating companies. So he's very often on TV, and his classes tend to be very popular, but he is a great professor as well. And then I'll also just mention, because we are located right in New York City, we have great adjunct faculty members as well. So there are adjunct professors who they might, be at their job all day, and then they'll come to Stern and teach a class at night. And I think they're especially helpful because they're great about bringing in maybe a problem they might have had at their company that day, and they'll bring it in for a discussion with the class at night. So I think it's all about, again, highlighting that real world component and not waiting until students graduate in order to help kind of solve some of the most pressing problems today. All right, so next, we'll talk about careers a little bit. So, certainly you will have the support of Stern and helping you to recruit to different companies that you might be interested in for full-time employment post-Stern. So if you look at the screen here, there are banks such as Citi, Goldman Sachs. There are technology companies like Amazon, luxury retail, Dior. We really do have access to companies from around the world, and being in New York actually makes it very easy to get in front of them. So I think your main resource at Stern is really going to be the Office of Career Development. So they are able to support students in all career endeavors, especially with helping you to grow relationships with some of these companies, but also get you prepared for these interviews. So this actually starts pre-orientation. So before you're even on campus, students will participate in the Ignite program, and they will do things like get their resume in the Stern format. And then once they get to campus and have learned a little bit more about industries, they'll help you do things like interview prep. They might suggest some companies that perhaps you hadn't thought of before. We have many career coaches who can really help you work towards your goals in a one-on-one setting. So they'll make sure you're prepared once recruitment season does start, for sure. The other thing I'll also mention is the professional clubs at Stern. So there are many clubs, such as, just to name a few off the top of my head, the Graduate Finance Association, the Management Consulting Association, Entertainment and Sports Association, where it is, these students as part of these clubs are passionate about those industries. And the second year students, when it comes to the full-time MBA, they love helping the first year students to really get prepared for internship recruiting and things like that. I'll also mention, so I would imagine that most people on this call, if they are interested in an MBA in the US, you would be coming in as an international student. And something that international students do need to think about as far as job recruiting is, if you do want to work in the US post an MBA, is that visa piece, right? So we want to make sure that students are prepared as far as, are the companies I'm interested, are they willing to sponsor for visas? Could people kind of give, could the coaches give examples of companies where students have worked in the past? So that is something that you would really partner with the coaches in order to think about much more clearly. Shayon, I know that you just graduated and you're working at Credit Suisse, but I was wondering if you could maybe talk about your recruiting process at Stern a little bit, just to give people a sense of the steps you took and what that was like. Well, we might, let's see, might have lost him. All right, well, I'll talk a little bit about it just from my perspective then. So essentially, for full-time students, once you get to campus, again, you have the Office of Career Development to help you start getting ready. Depending on industries that you might be recruiting for, you might be, meeting companies as early as October, submitting applications in November, and interviewing as early as January. So the timeline can be pretty quick. So I think certainly it's a good idea to have an understanding of what you might want to do coming into CERN. But again, there's definitely a level of exploration there as well. And again, your main resource is the Office of Career Development, as well as the professional clubs at CERN can definitely help you as well. I know Yinka is part of the part-time MBA program, meaning the career resources are a little bit different. So I don't know, Yinka, were you planning on changing companies at all after your MBA, or have you taken advantage of any of the career resources at CERN?
No, I haven't. I started working at Google before I joined
Google. Okay. Yeah,
so
right.
I'm staying in industry.
Yeah, and so people know that's actually pretty typical of part-time MBA students. Most of them are fairly happy in the company or industry that they're already in, but there are some career resources that are offered to the part-time students too. All right, so community. So a question I get very often is, we're located in the middle of New York City. How is it possible that CERN has any sort of student community? And I get this. I think a lot of people will often assume that students might just come to campus, go to class, go home, and that's it, almost more like a commuter school. And I'm happy to say that that's really not the case. I know even before I started at CERN, I had never worked at a business school before and had the sense that, students would be stuffy or really competitive and willing to step on each other's toes to get whatever it is that they might want. But I think, I've been pleasantly surprised to see how down to earth the students are. They're very willing to help each other out. And again, I think that all goes back to our core value of IQ plus EQ. But, we want to be a place where everyone can feel like they can be themselves. So they can, with their classmates, they can explore the city. Maybe they'll try something new they've never done before. We have plenty of clubs to help you do that. So I mentioned the professional clubs, but we also have many affinity clubs, such as ABBA's Association of Black and Hispanic Business Students. There's the Asian Business Society, clubs like that, CERN Women in Business. Or there are clubs that are just more fun. So there is the Arts, Culture, Cuisine Club that they definitely take advantage of being in New York City. There's also the Adventures Club. They go hiking on the weekends. So there's over 40 clubs. There's definitely going to be something for you. But, as part of that community, that also means the alumni. The alumni community at CERN is very extensive, and certainly part of a pay it forward mentality as well. So I'm going to now transition a little bit more into the admissions piece. So as I mentioned before, I definitely want to focus this more on tips and advice for you, rather than just listing out our application requirements and things like that. So before I begin, our admissions process at CERN is very holistic. And what holistic means is there's not one part of your application that is going to be far more important than other pieces of your application. It really is a collection of who you are academically and professionally and personally. We every year we spend a lot of time thinking about our application and deciding if this question is important in our evaluations. If something isn't as important, maybe we'll take it off that year. So what I'm trying to say, there's a lot of thought that goes into our application. So, however, you can think of the application kind of in buckets. So kind of, as I just said, your academic self, your professional self, and your personal self. So academics, these are, the academic records. That would be your undergraduate and graduate transcripts if you have them, standardized tests. These are things that we will require. A couple of notes, especially on your academic record, is, we have a highly global student body at CERN. And that means that our admissions committee is very familiar with grading systems, different educational systems around the world. So we know that grading systems are different. They're often actually a lot tougher than schools grade in the US. So don't worry about converting your GPA to, an American 4.0 style or trying to explain your grading system. We're very familiar with what they look like in different parts of the world. That's nothing you really have to worry about. When I'm reading transcripts, I'll look at things like your major. I will look at the classes you took each semester. Since, Stern has a pretty rigorous quantitative curriculum, I'll definitely keep an eye out for quantitative classes and things like that. Those could be business classes. It could be classes like calculus, engineering classes, things like that. So those are things I'll go through as I'm looking through your transcripts. And, if you feel like there's something you want to explain about your transcript, whether perhaps one semester you did very poorly, but there's a very good reason why, perhaps you had mono or something like that, definitely feel free to use the optional essay. I think that is really a good place to help explain different parts of your application where maybe we didn't necessarily give you the space to do so. As far as standardized tests, so we do require standardized tests. We accept the GMAT, the GRE, or the executive assessment. And, we feel that all of these tests are a sound indicator of how you would perform in, again, like a pretty rigorous quantitative curriculum. We'll only look at your highest overall score from a single test, meaning there's really no downside to retaking a test. Especially if you improve, we might say, okay, the student took the test 3 times, but each time he improved upon his score, and that's always great to see. My big piece of advice as far as tests is this really tends to take up a lot of people's time when they are applying to MBA programs. So give yourself a lot of time. You first, of course, want to give yourself time to study before you take the test for the first time. I would also even, schedule or at least leave enough time to schedule a retake before the deadline that you might be applying to, just to give yourself that option if you need it. So definitely give yourself time for standardized tests. And then the other thing I'll definitely note is that we don't have a preference as to what test you take. So I mentioned we accept several tests. Perhaps you feel the GRE is just a better test for you. You score higher on it. Take that test. Don't feel that you have to take the GMAT because that's the exam that people take when they go to business school. Most of the top tier US schools at this point are accepting more than one standardized test. And it's because we recognize that, that they all ask questions differently. We want people to be comfortable when they are taking a test. And then, anyone whose native language is not English or they haven't received a university degree in English, they have to also take the TOEFL or the IELTS exam. We actually also accept the Duolingo test at this point. So just know that you'll have to take that before you apply as well. So your personal self, or I should say your professional self, so your resume, we don't have a format that you need to use. I'd say most people will keep it to about 1 page. My big piece of advice for the resume is make sure you're highlighting your accomplishments and your successes and trying to quantify your impact where possible. I wouldn't just list out your job description. You really want to make it more about, okay, what have you accomplished in the 3 years you've been at a certain job? Maybe there is one particular project you worked on that you're very proud of. Like, that's something I want to hear more about rather than your job responsibilities that might be, a little bit more run of the mill. So we often get asked also, how much experience are we looking for? And are we looking for experience in certain industries? The answer is truly everyone is very different when they come to an MBA program. We have people who have spent their careers in business. On the other side of things, we have people who might have been a teacher for 5 years and decided they really wanted to make a big change in their career, and that's why they're applying to an MBA program. So really just try to focus on you and your own experiences more than the professional experience that others might have when they're coming in. For our essays, so we have a short answer question that focuses on your professional goals, your career goals, and we'll ask kind of what your short-term goals are in particular. This is a short answer question for a reason. It actually used to be an essay. We shortened it a little. We just want to get a quick idea of why you're going back to business school and kind of what you would like to do as far as function or role or industry post an MBA. Certainly, if you do get invited to interview, this is absolutely something we will get into more in depth. But again, we're not trying to trick you. We're just trying to learn more about, why an MBA will really help you achieve your career goals. If you are a little unsure, that's also fine. One piece of advice I would add for that is try and set up, informal conversations with friends or maybe people in your network who might have a job or be in the industry that you're interested in. I think the more people you talk to, the more people you really be able to get a good idea of something that you might want to do post an MBA. And then EQ endorsement. So this probably looks a little funny to everyone. This is our version of letters of recommendation. So we require 2 of them. We call them EQ endorsements because they specifically have a focus on emotional intelligence, and we'll ask your endorsers to really comment on that as part of their endorsement for you. So one should come from a current supervisor. The other can come from someone who knows you professionally or even personally. My advice, again, this might be a theme for my advice, but start early. The endorsements is the probably #1 thing that tends to hold up people's applications because they'll apply, but then their endorsers maybe haven't had time to write their endorsements yet. And we won't start reading an application until it's complete with both endorsements. So definitely give your endorsers plenty of time to get those in. And then my other kind of piece of advice around endorsers would be talk to them, whether it's in person or on Zoom or over the phone, talk to them about why you want an MBA program, what your career goals are, what your strengths are. I think that conversation will lead them to write an even stronger endorsement for you with that additional context. I definitely would be wary of providing suggestions in emails because you might be surprised to know that a passage from that email might wind up in an endorsement letter. So try to make that connection a little bit more personal in that way. And then talk to good segue on my end, I guess, for personal. So your personal self is something we also want to know a lot about. Our Pick 6 essay has been around at Stern for almost as long as I've been at Stern. But we ask students to describe themselves to the admissions committee using 6 images and captions. And, this, we kind of know who you are so far as a student and as a professional. We want to know more about you as a person. So this should be fun. Again, we're not trying to trick anyone. I would say try and pick 6 pieces of information about yourself that I might not necessarily be able to figure out from other parts of your application. So you could highlight your passions, interests, hobbies, perhaps places you've traveled to, your family, your friends, and there's a lot of different ways kind of to go about this, and it definitely should be more fun. So that's the Pick 6. And then the change essay is focuses mostly on, again, kind of our relationship with change. So we ask folks to pick a verb. So our taglines, if you look at my email signature, you'll see change, embrace it. So I want to know what verb would you choose other than, or it could be embrace, but there are other verbs to choose from and kind of why you would choose that verb. And this is an opportunity, again, to maybe show us maybe a time in your life where there was a big change, whether that change is positive or negative, and how you kind of came out better in the end. So that essay definitely is definitely more personal. And then the interview. So once we've read your application, if we like what we're seeing, you might be invited to interview, and this is by invite only. So we interview every full-time MBA student that we admit. I think this definitely ensures the value of the Stern network, but interviews are conducted only by members of the admissions committee, so it might be me during your interview. I will have just read your application. I have had a good sense of kind of who you are so far. And it's about 30 minutes, but we definitely go beyond what you put in your application. You know, I might have questions about your pick six or your career goals, your work experience so far, things like that. So it's an opportunity for me to get to know you better, but it's 100% an opportunity for you to get to know the school better as well. Because if you are admitted, you'll have to decide if Stern is where you want to go. You know, once you do make that decision, we want to make sure you're comfortable here, you feel happy about that decision. So the interviews, they tend to be, I would say, more conversational. They're not too scary, I promise. You know, we're really just wanting to learn more about who you are as a person. All right, and then I won't harp on the deadlines too much because these are all on our website. I will note, I often get asked, when should I apply? And the answer I always give is apply when you feel that your application is at its strongest. And what that means, to give you an example, is maybe you're aiming for the October 15th deadline, which is our next deadline is today. I just remembered it was the 15th. Perhaps you're aiming for that deadline and you realized, you know, I feel like I've rushed writing my essays. I think I could really spend some more time and get them in a better place so that they're a better example of who you are personally and professionally. So my advice would always be, don't just submit your application for the sake of getting in before a deadline. Take that time, make your essays better, and apply when you're at your strongest. You could apply between deadlines. Our admissions, you know, we review applications on an ongoing basis. So we're constantly looking through applications and reviewing everything that people have submitted. As far as, you know, do you have a better chance of getting in if you apply earlier? Do you have a better chance of getting a scholarship if you apply earlier? The answer is no. We admit students across all 4 of our deadlines. We award scholarships across all 4 of our deadlines. So that's definitely something that I just wanted to highlight as well. All right, and then last slide, this is a great example of an event just to learn more about Stern, and definitely glad that you all just listened to me talk for half an hour plus. But there are other ways you can get in touch with us, whether it's email or phone. Our graduate ambassadors are all second-year students in the program. They're a great resource if you want to just learn more about Stern. And yeah, I think now I'm going to stop sharing. We can definitely transition into more of questions for me, and yeah, see what you all have questions about here. So thank you. And let me actually look at the chat box.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Of
Yes,
course.
like you said, quite a few questions in the chat box there.
Mhm.
You have a juice pack you refuse to share with the house. That's interesting. Glad to know by now. Yeah. So on the chat box, we do have someone who's asking if there are assistantships, graduate assistantships, I imagine, for the 2-year MBA program, especially in finance.
So I'm assuming by assistantship, this might be more like internship.
So from what we know of it, it's usually more, or maybe you could just tell us what exists in that regard, but it's usually more working in-house with
Yes.
everybody, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, you know, one thing that is very important to all of our students going in is the MBA program is it gives you a great return on your investment, you know, a few years down the road, but it is an expense upfront, of course. So, you know, you're going to spend a lot of your time, your first semester of your first year, recruiting for that summer internship over the summer, and that's really pertaining to your full-time employment post an MBA eventually. However, you know, there are ways that folks could work on campus to get just some income while they are a student. So to give you an example, I just mentioned our graduate ambassadors in our office, you know, they're all paid for their services. You could be a teaching assistant in certain courses, depending on, you know, the professor. There are other departments where you could also be a graduate assistant and earn the money. So I think there are certainly different ways to do that as a student too.
Great, great. Thank you for that clarification. So definitely there are some courses and discussions that will be had that you could have rather to get some stipends for such things. Great.
Right.
Then we have someone asking if the admission is a rolling admission type setup we have here. Is that what's currently undergone in the
Yeah, that's a great question. So I know many business schools in the US, they were more operate on rounds. So for example, you apply to round one and on a certain date, you'll hear yes, no, whatever the answer might be. So for us, I just described this a little bit, but our admissions process is much more ongoing. So for anyone who applies before a certain deadline, so to give you an example, if you apply before the September 15th deadline, we will review your application and get back to you with either an invitation to interview, a waitlist decision, or a denied decision no later than December 1st. And that means we could read your application on October 17th and get you an answer then. It could be mid-November. It kind of just depends on when we end up reading your application. So I like to describe it as more of an ongoing basis, a little different from your kind of classic example of rolling admissions.
Okay, and we have someone here asking if certain considerations can be taken into place. People who you may not have that particular endorsement letter by the time, or recommendation letter rather, by the time your application is, but you will get it after. Are there exceptions for such persons? Such exceptions.
Oh, you just broke up a little. What it was?
So I said persons who are engaged, persons who whose recommendation letters come in after the application deadline, can exceptions be made for such persons? That's a question that we have.
Good. Yeah, that's a good one. So yes and no. As I mentioned, we really want folks to get their endorsements in before that deadline and before you do submit your application, just so it is complete and we can move forward at that time. With that being said, again, perhaps your endorser's late by a couple of days. Usually not too big of a deal because we do review applications on an ongoing basis.
Okay, great, phenomenal. Okay, on to it. Yes, so now like Sheo mentioned before, he had to drop off. Very important for international students, especially funding for international students. What's it like, even as of today, right? How's that process like for them? And
sure,
on a class basis, what current MBA class, right? How's it properly? Let's say, how's the demographic of that funding wise?
Funding, yeah. So I don't have particular statistics as far as it goes to funding off the top of my head. What I can say is I did mention kind of scholarships when I was talking about deadlines a little bit. All of our scholarships are merit-based scholarships, and the only thing you need to do when submitting your applications is check off a box that you want to be considered for scholarships. That's it. You don't have to submit any other extra documents or things like that. And then if we, when we are admitting people, we'll consider them for scholarships at that time. So I would say about 25% of our incoming class each year ends up getting a scholarship of some sort. That could be a full award, meaning you have the Stern will give you a scholarship for 2 years of tuition and fees. It could be more of a partial award, maybe it's just a certain amount per semester. So that is certainly one way, but of course, not everyone is able to get a scholarship. So other ways that students are able to fund the program, especially international students, could be through, there are private loans, and our financial aid website definitely has a lot of great resources when it comes to private loans, as well as some of those assistantships that I did mention before, whether it's a teaching assistant or a graduate assistant. But I definitely, my advice when you start thinking about MBA programs is to also start thinking about, what do you have that could contribute to funding, and thinking about that. And luckily, our graduate financial aid website, they have a lot of great tools and resources to help students try and figure that out ahead of time. Because I would really hate for students to be in the position where, they've been admitted to Stern, but then all of a sudden they realize that they don't know how they might, be able to submit payment for it. So that's, I think, a thought process that definitely should kind of coincide the application process as well. Just start thinking about that because you don't want it to be a major surprise.
Great, great. Thank you for that clarification. So opening it up to the rest of the house, attendees, please don't forget to type in your questions in the chat box. Any further questions, any further,
Yeah, let
questions,
me
right?
glance. The pick six. So yeah, I did talk about that a little bit before, but essentially,
Yes.
again, this is a more creative essay. So we're just looking for students to pick 6 images that best describe themselves to the admissions committee. And again, I'm just looking, who are you like outside of your job, or who are you like outside of your schooling? What do you like to do in your free time? These are the types of things that we're getting at. So you definitely could focus on people who are dear to you. It could be hobbies, passions, things like that. It could be 6 completely different images. It could be 6 images that have some sort of connection. So it's really up to you as far as the pick 6. That definitely actually is my favorite part of applications, is reviewing people's pick 6 and seeing kind of what they came up with. And then I see Jude asked about application fee and GMAT and GRE waivers. So this is something I don't think I touched upon. So we do have an application fee waiver request form. Let me actually post it in the chat for everyone, just in case you want to see what it looks like. But essentially, we will waive application fees automatically for certain people. And then we have a request form if you do want to make a request as well. So here is, there we go. There's the link for that. And then the test waiver process, that's a good question. So we do have a test waiver request process. So essentially, if you want to make a request and prove that you're academically ready for the program, we will review those requests ahead of time. Essentially, the way we think about it is standardized tests are often an essential way for us to establish that you're academically ready for the program. If you feel like you are unable to take a standardized test, or maybe you're already very academically prepared for the program, then you'll go ahead and submit this request. You'll submit, strong examples of academic readiness, which is, transcripts, your resumes, things like that. We'll review all of that, and then we might approve you for a waiver, or we might deny you and say, you know what, we don't feel that we have enough so far, and we prefer that you take a test. So standardized test waiver is certainly not a guarantee, but there is a request process for that on our website as well. It is on the standardized testing page on our website, but I'm just going to throw that link in the chat as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to receive this. So yes, open chat to others. Please, any more questions? Any more, questions you want to push to Catherine?
Yeah, and it can be about the program as well. It can be about admissions, but I'm happy to answer any type of question, really.
Great, great. What we can do, since it seems there are no particular questions right now, we could forward you any further questions that we get from people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. It's been phenomenal. So as we discussed earlier, if you could drop off so we could have further conversations on it. Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. It was a pleasure talking to everyone. I'm actually just going to throw my email address in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out personally, definitely go ahead and do so.
Thank you. Definitely.
All right.
I'm going to also drop off now.
Oh, no.
You want me to stay on?
Yeah. Yes,
oh,
please,
okay.
All right.
All right. Have a good afternoon. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night.
Bye.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope we had an interesting session with Catherine just now. So right now we have Alanka, who is currently undergoing the program. So here we have some time from Alanka. If you want to ask any questions, particularly student to student or aspiring student to student, have those heart-to-heart talks right now. If you want to have any of those questions push forward, now is the chance and time for us to do that. So Yeah, please direct your questions. I think at this point we could probably just, you could raise up your hand and then we could